The destruction man has wrought upon the environment comes in varying degrees, but there can be few bigger scandals than the virtual draining of one of the world's great lakes, the Aral Sea. Infant mortality rates have soared along its now arid shores, and the Kazakhstan government has renewed appeals for international help. The Aral Sea started shrinking back in the 1970s. In the 80s, the United Nations declared the area an ecological disaster zone as the health of the local population began to deteriorate. By the 90s, the sea had shrunk to half its original size, and despite signs that this decline may now be in reverse, people are still dying. 10 years ago, our special correspondent Sue Lloyd-Roberts was the first journalist to film the tragedy. She's been back with her camcorder. This is her report.
The rich shoreline of the Aral Sea, which first attracted Russian settlers to Kazakhstan 200 years ago, has gone. Desert has now replaced the largest expanse of water between the Pacific and the Caspian. And a once proud fleet of fishing boats lies abandoned in a sea of salt. Little has changed since I first filmed here 10 years ago. Salt is at least an effective preservative. The cause of the problem lies further to the east. Those early Russian settlers became Soviet planners who ordered dams across the Syr River to divert the water to irrigate cotton plantations, on which millions of tons of pesticides were then spread. The scheme, which coincided with the mass production of man-made fibers, failed to make the region rich and left a vast toxic legacy. The Syr River, which once flowed into the Aral Sea, is now a mere trickle by comparison, and it's poisoning everyone who lives around it. The shrinking of the Aral Sea and its tragic consequences has been going on now for over 20 years, and yet it's become a forgotten crisis. It's as if outsiders find the problems too enormous and too long-term. One well-known international aid agency arrived here last year with a 3-year program of regional aid, only to withdraw 2 months later. Locals accuse them of being overwhelmed, of failing to see a quick fix, and of abandoning them. The impact on lives and health has been tragic. 2/3 of the women in the area are anemic, which accounts for one of the highest rates of infant mortality and stillbirths in the world. 1 in 4 babies die, and the population has fallen dramatically. The chief doctor at the maternity hospital crams as many women, 120 in all, as possible into cramped wards for the sole purpose of ensuring that they get adequate food and clean water before or if they come to their pregnancy's full term.
What can I say? I'm 35 and it's my 9th pregnancy and I've yet to give birth. We all have the sickness here. It's a common problem. I'm now 8 months pregnant, and to be honest, I am afraid.
Even if the babies are born alive, they got to be tough to survive. By 3 months old, they'll have excessive salt in their bodies. By 1 year, they'll be suffering from a pollution-related disease. I get a feeling of déjà vu. I've heard these stories before. 10 years ago in hospitals on the other side of the sea in Uzbekistan. Why, after so long, has nothing changed?
The
situation hasn't changed because the environmental problems of the Aral region are the same. In fact, they're worse. And so the health of women of childbearing age is steadily deteriorating. We don't have fresh water, and people accumulate sand and stones in their kidneys, and they lose blood when urinating, and they don't eat enough protein to compensate for the loss of blood. There are as many pregnancies as ever, but the women either miscarry or give birth to stillborn or handicapped babies. That is the tragedy of our region, and why they call us an ecological disaster area.
Outside the hospital gates, you soon get a measure of the ecological disaster area these people call home. The pesticides which were scattered on the cotton fields combine with salt from the exposed seabed to create toxic dust clouds which contaminate every person and animal around. Aralsk was once a pretty seaside town renowned for its fishing. Its mayor offered to take me on his favorite childhood walk along the promenade and told me how he and his friends would throw themselves into the sea here after school. It was 20 years ago that the sea began to recede, and it's now over 60 miles away. And the boats in this formerly prosperous shipbuilding port lie marooned in stagnant puddles.
There
used to be dozens of ships moored here between voyages across the sea to ports like Nukus in Uzbekistan and ports all over the shores of the old Aral Sea, from where they would link up with trains to Russia and beyond. All that activity guaranteed full employment here in Aralsk. Now all the industry, the fishing, the cargo ships and the jobs have gone, which is why the number of people living here and their standard of living has dropped dramatically, and people's motivation, their confidence in the future have gone with it.
Unemployment has reached 90% in some areas of western Kazakhstan. Emenbayev and his family are refugees from a fishing village which has lost its sea.
I had been fishing for 40 years, since I was 16, for as long as there was plenty of water and plenty of fish.
His son keeps his father's fishing net as a memory of better times. Because he knows no other trade, the younger man travels 300 miles to fish now and is away for 2 to 3 months at a time. The next day I took up the mayor's offer to show me how the locals are trying to win back their sea. I took the old man with me. He wanted to show me where he once lived and the opportunity to return to see his old home for the first time in 10 years. Grimly, he looked out at his old fishing boat from the air and his village, which is now near deserted. Where there were once 300 families and even a secondary school, only a handful of old people live here today, including the cousin he used to share a boat with. They sat where once they gazed out onto the sea, only now the view is of camels. The cousin asks whether it's true the sea is coming back.
The water is coming back, they say, and if the sea comes back, I'll come back with my family, and we shall go fishing again with my son and my grandson, and I'll shout at you from the shore, just like the old days.
Okay, come with your family. If it's true that we can fish, then you'll be welcome.
The reason for the old men's optimism and the miracle which the mayor wanted to show me looks impressive. The sea is coming back, a bit of it, captured by a 10-mile-long dam further down the Sirdaria River, built from local funds and by local effort. It's not enough to bring back the fishing industry yet, but it has stopped some of the salt sweeping through the town, and even some seagulls have returned. But the courage and sacrifice involved in getting this far may be to no avail. The mayor inquires anxiously after the workers. The £200,000 which was raised for the project has run out. There's no more money forthcoming and wages haven't been paid. The men say they're fine. Above all, the project has restored hope to the area, a commodity which has, until recently, been as scarce as fresh water.
It seems to me we've had 1 million so-called experts and hundreds of delegations from all over the world here. Frankly, if each of them had brought a bucket of water with them, the sea would have filled up again by now. But unfortunately, they didn't. They come, they look, they carry out surveys, they make promises, and they never come back. That's why we took matters into our own hands. And it's beginning to bear fruit.
But the machines are breaking down. It's become a typical Soviet-style affair of belts and braces, backed up by sheer willpower. The dam has become the victim of its own success. As the water increases, it has started to collapse. They need another $80 million, according to the latest survey by international experts. 20% of the work on the dam has been completed to achieve this impact on the Aral Sea, but the local governments say they've run out of funds to finish the job, which would make a real difference to people's lives here. They've appealed to international agencies like the World Bank for help, but so far there's been no reply. Meanwhile, the mothers and children still queue up at the hospitals. This mother is anemic, the child has TB, for which the hospital has no drugs, and surrounded by a poisoned atmosphere will be lucky to survive. The people who live around the Aral Sea need either a huge relief effort or the return of their sea to save them. No one's holding out much hope that either might happen soon.